Citizen TV and staying with us, we want to have a conversation with Dr. Fred Matiang'i. You may remember him. He was once the Interior Cabinet Secretary and also coordinating very many departments within government. Dr. Fred Matiang'i, how are you today?
Fine, thank you. Of our police is not cast out, or we don't train police in Kenya to kill citizens. The theory of policing in Kenya is for the preservation of law and order. That does not mean, however, that individual police officers can go above and over the responsibilities that they have. In most cases, that would happen. It's just like in the teaching profession. We do not prepare teachers in our country so that they can have affairs with students and engage in illegal activity. But we are aware that that kind of temptation can happen. That is why, for example, there is a code of conduct for teachers. That's why in the case of the police, we have standing orders. When riots have happened or any security activity across the country, when it has happened, everyone knows and everyone fears, even in the military, when the military are going to act, even internationally, by the way, there are rules of war. There are rules of management of conflict, because people are sued and taken to the international community for breaching even the conventions on war. Same thing with policing. Riots can happen, and they do happen, and they will happen, by the way. And when police are trained to deal with riots and respond to the riots, they are given clear instructions and guidelines on how they're supposed to go. Those who act outside of those instructions, in other words, they act outside of the standing orders, they face the consequences of the law. There are police officers who are in court today for actions they did. There are police officers who have been prosecuted. The question I think you ought to ask is that when we had violations, what did we do? And someone asked me that at the press conference the other day. I pointed out scale and admission. When things went wrong, and we believe in some cases things went wrong, we readily admitted. We actually cooperated with the agencies. I remember in the case of Baby Pendo in Kisumu, for example, the relationship between IPOA, for obvious reasons, and the National Police Service is usually not the best, because IPOA is supposed to investigate the police and so on. We mediated as government. We said we would like to support the investigation in this matter because this has gone beyond what is supposed to be done. So it is in the scale, it's in the admission. Are we standing up to accept when wrongs have been done that they be redressed? The answer is yes. And wrongs can be done anywhere. I mean, whether you look at the teaching profession, medical profession, legal profession, and so on, every organization has got. Why do lawyers punish people? It's because they know that you can be tempted to take clients' money. And there are lawyers in this country who have actually taken clients' money. And they have been punished because of that. So we can't come up and say we are punishing the Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya and we think the Attorney General is wrong because during his tenure, so many lawyers took clients' money. That is not the case. Because did the Attorney General stand up to what they were supposed to do? In my view, if the answer is yes, that is it. So I can't take responsibility. Did I stand up and say where officers have committed crime, they need to face the law as it is?
Yet, of course, the police were out to quell those protests because of a statement you had made. And you said the Inspector General of Police has been advised accordingly.
I don't understand what you are reading in that statement. You know, under the law, by the way.
I'm saying...
Under the law, let me say this. Under the law, and then let us not always go to things when they are convenient to us. The Minister for Interior actually has no powers over the Inspector General of Police. The law even prescribes that when you address the Inspector General of Police on any matter, you put it in writing. I've said before, and it's on record, for the entire time I was Minister of Interior, I wrote 2 letters to the Inspectors General, one to Boynet and one to Mutiambai. And before I sent the letters, I always ran them through the Office of the Attorney General for the AG's office to confirm whether these letters pass muster or they don't pass muster, as it were. So when I say the Inspector General has been advised accordingly, it means it just means exactly that you see the Inspector General has been advised to obey the law. And in most cases, by the way, when it comes to responses to riot and those kind of things, first of all, it's a matter discussed by the National Security Council. There has never been an incident, and I don't remember of an incident myself when I was Minister for Interior, when I communicated to the Inspector General of Police independent of decisions that were made by the National Security Council. And the Inspector General sits in the National Security Council, as it were. the Attorney General would not allow me to communicate illegality.
This advice is from who?
When we say the Inspector General has been advised accordingly, it means the Inspector General has been advised to keep law and order because that is the responsibility by the National Security Council.
So the National Security Council could have advised the IG?
Yeah, but you see, advice does not mean the Inspector General has been told to go and kill people. I don't understand what you're reading.
So it's the same statement I read for you, that due to the imminent danger, I want to skip a few lines and saying that we will not allow demonstrations within the central business districts of Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu. And you also added the Inspector General of Police has been advised accordingly. So therefore, the quelling of protests would emanate from that statement that you made.
You know, you're just overreading the statement, or you are reading your own things into it. Because you see, at all times, the Inspector General of Police is a member of the National Security Council. Everything about that is discussed at the National Security Council. In fact, the Inspector General provides a plan on what he or she would like to do in cases where we have a riot or we have a problem or a crisis of any kind. In most cases, we go with the plan that has been provided by the Inspector General. But you see, I don't know how it happens these days, but during the time I was in government, we had something we call the MAT, Multi-Agents Team, where security institutions sat together, the National Intelligence Service, the DMI, the Director of Military Intelligence, and the police would sit together and share information. The advice comes from this sharing of information because, for example, if the Inspector General does not have enough information on the terrorist sleeper cells, which will be an intelligence matter, he takes advice from there. I mean, we all take advice. Okay. We will say the minister has been advised accordingly. It means the minister has been given the information he needs to act and to do the right thing, as it were. It doesn't mean that the minister has been told, now go and clamp down on these people, or whatever the case may be. And I honestly think you are just, you know, any reading of that statement beyond what I've explained is essentially intended to be negative, and I honestly think that's what you're doing.
Now to current issues. The current hold of the office that you held at the time, just last week, I'm sure you heard what he said in Kikuyu, that any protester approaching or any person approaching a police station, shoot them. Is this an order you would give, whether publicly or quietly?
You know, first of all, I don't want to pass judgment on my successors in the ministry. In fact, the challenge you usually have when you have served in government, in particular positions and so on, is to keep the discipline and the respect for your successors and those who come after you.
Yeah.
I don't know how they operate, so I don't want to pass judgment on them. But every time we had a very seamless relationship between the security sector and the legal advisory services of government. Every time we acted or did anything, we always consulted with the Office of the Attorney General. There are cases without number that I remember in government when I would have liked to do certain things, but the Honorable Attorney General, first Professor Gideon Muigai, and later on retired Justice Kiara Kariuki, would say you can't do this because you have no powers to do this kind of thing. Yeah, and we always consulted with the Office of the Attorney General. And actually, even where we went out, because sometimes, you know, when you're out there in the field as a cabinet minister, you can take some decisions on the spur of the moment. And when later on, sometimes you're out there in the field, you're not even with your legal people and so on and so forth. When later on, it's discovered that, or when you come back to the office and even your legal team in the office tells you, you know, Minister, this cannot work the way you did and so on, logically, or the Attorney General himself actually calls you up when they see it and they tell you this is it, what you said at this particular place or what you did at this particular place is wrong, and you don't have powers to do that kind of thing under the law. If that happens, as it were, they revise the position, as it were, because you know, people need to understand one thing: public officials are human beings; they are not God. You can make mistakes, as it were. So, if the answer you want from me is yes or no, I wouldn't make that kind of order. Or saying shoot, kill, or whatever the case may be. But you see, again, as I said, I can't pass judgment on a context on which I don't have full facts about, as it were.
All right. What are your thoughts about, because we've seen a trend, guns are being deployed. We don't know by who, but we have seen them, especially in protests.
On this particular matter, in terms of security, the challenge we have in our country overall, politically speaking, is that there's a very low level of accountability in our political practice in the country. And what I mean by a low level of accountability is this. In addition to deployment of goons or whatever it is, as it were, the speech that we see from leaders and various actors within the political environment is sometimes very frustrating, as it were. On the case of deployment of goons, the government has got sufficient machinery and a capability to address this particular issue. Honestly speaking, if I've explained this for a moment, I take it that this has not changed very much. In Nairobi, for example, we have the Nairobi security team, which is led by the regional commissioner in Nairobi. It brings the county police commander, the county DC officers and NIs and everybody and so on. I cannot imagine actually that this security infrastructure does not know that some is hiring or training goons to bring them to town to cause mayhem. I cannot imagine that that's the case. And if they have the information, then they should go forward and act. What I find very interesting, in my view, and if I may be very frank with you, is that making allegations are being made by public officials. They are the custodians of information because they're the ones who have the instruments of power and the capacity to find out who is doing what. You know, the way the National Intelligence Service works, I can't carry guns, drive with guns from Kisii to Nairobi in my car, or how people bring in guns to me, and the National Intelligence Service does not know that Matiang'i is receiving guns or is engaged with some rebel guys in some corner and they're supplying guns. And then for them to wait until a particular time, then they say, oh, Matiang'i could be having guns. I find that very strange. Where were they when that was happening? And then it's their responsibility to know that the way this fellow is behaving, he normally has night meetings with people and he's recruiting these guns and so on. I don't want to pretend. I know for sure that the National Intelligence Service listens to our phone calls and so on and so forth. This happens. They have ways of collecting intelligence. So how is it that if they know that some is recruiting goons from Roysambu to bring them to Nairobi, why wait until the goons get to Nairobi? Because you have the capacity, you have the police in Roysambu, you will know that these people are being hired, they're being recruited in this particular house. So you go there and disrupt the matter. That is part of the security work. So again, on this particular matter, my honest view is that if indeed goons were hired by an individual and the government has got evidence that that has been done, then honestly speaking, it is right to act on that particular matter. But when action is not taken, as if I hired goons, for example, if there was a demonstration in Nairobi and I hired goons, myself, Fred Matiang'i, I hired goons, how can the government don't know that I'm trying to hire goons? And there is one of the reasons why I will not do it is because I know that by the second day, the government will know. They can even go trace money. I have moved money from this account, I've been paid by so and so and so on and so forth. They can trace that money. So my view is, if that has happened, and I've seen that being reported widely and so on and so forth, the question I ask is this. You know, we can engage in gossip, hearsay, he said this, I said, they allege, and so on. Someone needs to act. Okay. And then once action has been taken, we will all have facts to deal with.
Now, for the sake of accountability, there's something you said in September 2017. It was in the lead up to the repeat presidential election. You were in Kisii, South Mugirango, and you said that anyone who is joking does not know Chinkororo. I am the Nkororo from this place. I am in charge of security. The youth who are here, if anyone tries to block you from voting, I can order the police to look aside and you rough them up.
That's a nonsensical thing. I can tell you it's a nonsensical thing that was reported out of context at that particular time. I explained it several times at that particular time when it happened. First of all, I was misquoted on that particular matter. It was reported out of context at that particular point, and even when political leaders from the opposition raised the issue, I faced them and explained to them what happened, and they were satisfied. They didn't have a problem with that.
So what did you say?
I was even asked that question in Parliament, by the way. I don't understand why it's a non-issue. It was even raised in Parliament. Before a committee in Parliament, they asked me the question, and I explained to them. I told them, this is the context you have, this is the issue. I never said any of those things.
So what did you say?
By the way, because it happened in 2017, and it was one of those campaign moments. Yeah. First of all, I didn't say that because you have not a thug, that you know for sure. I didn't say that I'm a thug and so on. I can't quite remember the exact context in which it was, but the reporter, who first of all, I was speaking in vernacular.
Yeah.
The reporter who tried to report what I said in vernacular, as it were. And he was not saying, like, go and rough those people up and beat them up and so on. Like, how can you say that on a minister for security? How?
I wish you could tell me what you said, because I don't understand your mother tongue, but you're denying what is transcribed.
But I think I will get the transcript of what I gave Parliament when I went before Parliament at that particular time. But it was never like, we find these people, rough them up and something like that. It was not that. Because I remember I went to Parliament on that particular issue, and when it was raised in Parliament, I explained it.
So what do you think of that organization? I don't know they exist anymore.
It's a very silly thing. That thing doesn't even exist. It's a proscribed organization. By the way, let me tell you the truth. You know, this is where we all go wrong. Media spends time on things that don't even matter. That organization doesn't even exist as I speak to you, and I don't remember when it was last proscribed. It wasn't even proscribed by 2 governments ago. It was proscribed by a government in the 60s and so on. So people like me who grew up around the 70s and so on didn't even have a chance of interacting with that organization.
You made reference to it.
It just became a byword, you know. I don't know, a byword that is used by people about to refer to, you know, rancor or something like that. It's like you can say Moran, you know, these are Morans, you know, these Morans and something like that. And if you were to go to communities which keep Morans and Moranism, as it were, it doesn't exist in the manner in which it existed in the 60s and the 70s. There are people who are growing up these days who have never even seen those Morans.
Yet you made reference to it.
You know, Sam, that is actually a non-issue, to be honest with you. It's a completely non-issue.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a total non-issue. I mean, an issue that was dealt with, and I've never found anybody who cares about it, and who even cared about it at that particular time.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's your answer, which is fine. Now, let's talk about integrity and the questions of the rule of law. Just before he left office, there were reports about people that were being killed and dumped at River Yala. The count, according to the International Justice Mission, is at 36. No justice has been served on those persons. What do you know about River Yala killings?
You know, thanks for asking me that question, because this is the first time ever I'm having a public opportunity to answer that question directly. Because I've been seeing every time people say I'm going to go into public life, people start playing a song with 2 stanzas, Rivayara, Ruarakaland, and so on, and you see it repeated over and over again. I've never had an opportunity myself to publicly look the cameras in the face and say this is what it is and so on. When in 2021, the issue of a report was published by a local media about bodies being pulled out of Rivayala, just like I saw last week and the week before, for us, we asked the Inspector General of Police, Matiang'i, what was happening at that time. We agreed that the gravity of the situation is such that the DCI himself should go to that place and find out what's happening. The DCI spent some time there with a team from the DCI. When they came back, we asked for an inquest. We demanded an inquest. At the National Security Council, we asked for an inquest. Can we go into this matter and find out what's happening? The DCI and the police told us, you know, fortunately for us, their bodies. Let us get the families to claim the bodies, then we build the stories from there. We open the file, we take statements from the families so that we understand the circumstances under which these people disappeared and the circumstances under which their bodies were found in Rivayala. By the time we were leaving government, the file was open. It was not closed at that particular time because investigations were going on. And that's why I keep saying every time, what happened with the file? I didn't live with the file. In any case, I would have nothing to do with the file as a cabinet minister. That was a police matter. And you know, our detractors or people who like to make negative claims about this are always, they choose when it is convenient for them to say these things. The police service is independent. When they are doing certain things, it's dependent on the minister at other times. As a minister, I would have nothing with that investigation. I wouldn't even influence it for any particular purposes, as it were. The file was open. We didn't live with the file when we left government. So why don't we close the file and let us take action in the direction in which the investigations are pointing us? Besides, by the way, The best way to deal with this matter, in my view, is to have a public inquest so that all of us role players who were in the security sector at that point in time, we go face the inquest, and I'm ready to go before a magistrate or a judge, whoever it is going to preside over that inquest, and say what I know about it. But you see, the problem is throwing stones of convenience or political opportunity when the time is ripe. You know, say every time they say, oh, Rivayala and so on and so forth. If I was responsible for a crime that was committed by a police officer when I was Minister for Interior, then I'm responsible for all road accidents that took place, you know, when I was Minister for Interior. I'm responsible for all the violence, robbery with violence cases. I'm responsible for all rape cases that happened and so on and so forth. It's just not possible as it were. And even as we are seated here, there could be crimes that are being committed somewhere. Mm-hmm. We are not saying the minister is in charge. When the bodies were traced out there last week, I didn't hear anybody saying Kipchumba Murkomen is dumping bodies at Rivayala and so on. So the question is, things need to be addressed and dealt with in their proper context. The challenge is that we have very low level of political accountability in our country, where, you know, people say just about anything they want to say and get away with it. Right. And when they have no evidence and so on, let's have a public inquest. And I've said, in the security sector, now we are sweeping so much under the carpet. The advice that we used to get from, and I cherish that advice from senior officials in the security sector. I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. My former director of intelligence, our director of intelligence, General Kameru, and the others, don't politicize security matters. When it comes to security, this is something that unites everybody, and it's something we need to look at objectively and fairly, as it were. So if there are unresolved matters in the country, let them be investigated in a public and open manner. Right. Bodies were found in Akwari here, and some lackluster guy was arrested. Then he walked out of a police station from the middle of our capital city, and then that is it. I know the capacity of our security forces. I know the capacity of our intelligence forces. You cannot tell me that that guy walked like that into thin air and left. When our terrorists escaped from prison here at Kamiti Maximum Prison when I was Minister for Interior, within 72 hours, we not only had the terrorists back, we had taken all the administrative actions, including firing the Commissioner General of the Prison Service. So there are things that need to be done.
Yet, Dr. Fred, look, you said that the capacity in our security sector is extremely high, that nothing would happen without their knowledge. In fact, you said that goons cannot be planning, or people planning to have goons in protest, and they do not know. Yet, the reports came in January 2022. You left office in, was it October or September 2022, after the new cabinet came in? And at that time, nobody knew what was going on, that bodies were being dumped in Rivayala?
Sam, let me tell you, my friend, there are investigations that take 7 years or 8 years to complete.
No, I'm saying beforehand, as they were happening, nobody knew that something was happening at Rivayala.
Well, the CID have collected reports from police officers in the region. Actually, the senior police officers who wrote statements about that particular incident, about what they knew at that point. The reason why action was not concluded, in my view, and we spoke to Kinoti about that matter, is because work was going on to piece together all those bits and pieces of it so that they would find a conclusive position on what was going to be done. And that's why the file was not closed. The question is not our knowledge or who knew what was going on at that particular time. Then the officers involved, all of them have been asked to write statements, and I believe they have information on what was going on. That's why I'm asking the question, why can't action be taken?
Okay. Now, Chris Musando was the ACT director at IBC in the lead up to 2017 election. He was killed and his body found late July. What do you know about that?
The incident was reported, and I know it the way you know it, that an official of IBC was killed. And the investigations were going on. We've asked questions several times about the matter. And every time the issue comes up, I keep saying, why don't we have a public inquest on this matter? I don't think that file was closed. The file is available, or it must be somewhere in the DCI. Why can't information be put? If anybody has information of any kind implicating anybody, what stops them from putting the information out? What stops them from taking the information to the law enforcement agencies?
Did you pursue that? Because at that time you were acting Minister Security. From September that year, you became Substantive Cabinet Secretary for Security.
The DCI kept saying, by the way, there are so many of those murders. There is Musando, there is Jacob Juma, later on the one of 2022 of Kenei, and so on. There are those murders. When DCI tells you the file is open, they're looking for information, even the president, even if you are president yourself, there's nothing you can do. Because you see, every time you ask, it's like a bring-up system. Every time you ask the DCI, where are you with this matter? They tell you, we're investigating the matter, we are looking for some people, we have these leads, we are doing this, and so on and so forth. There's nothing you can do. You are not the investigating officer, you are the minister. So the question is, you go by what the Inspector General of Police tells you, with what the DCI tells you. And all these files, we've kept asking questions about them. Where are we with this investigation? We are looking for more information on this matter. We have these leads in this particular direction and so on. What would you do? And you know, by the way, you can't jump the gun and go to the press and say, I'm addressing the press today and say, in any case, what would you be telling the country anyway?
Does that then mean, even the current government, there's nothing much they can do about these matters?
That's why I asked for a public inquest. That's why I'm saying, where investigations need to be hastened, let them be hastened. You know, the challenge is this, Sam. To keep making references or to keep politicizing a matter that is as grave as citizens having died and investigations about how they died is not complete. It's very unfortunate and very frustrating. And anyone who can use anything to say that kind of thing. I can come up, as I said earlier, I'm concerned about the very low level of accountability. In 2017, I don't know that you were in that press conference, as acting Minister for Interior in OP, when reporters asked me that a senior politician has claimed in Kisumu that we have taken 100 body bags to Kisumu because we intend to kill people. I excused myself from the press conference and called the Inspector General of Police and the DCI and all those people.